They went missing, and the silence stretched for 3 weeks. 23 days with no word from the RCMP, no public updates, and a community left to hold its breath. That silence became its own kind of ache, a vacuum filled by speculation, prayer, and more than a little fear. When the Mounties finally stepped forward, what they announced was not the comforting news anybody wanted to hear. Instead, their long-awaited update delivered a hard truth. Time is critical, and the trail that might have led back to Lily and Jack has grown cold. The words landed like a stone. They didn't close the book, they changed the chapter. What follows is a clear, careful look at what that silence meant, what the press conference said and didn't say, how the search shifted, and why the community's response matters now more than ever. For 23 days, after the 2 children vanished from a rural Pictou County property, official communication about the investigation was virtually non-existent. That long period without information did 2 things at once. It strained public trust and magnified every rumor. In stressful situations, people crave facts as much as they crave comfort. When facts are scarce, human minds fill gaps with possibilities, some helpful, some harmful. Local residents and those following the case beyond the county relied on sparse briefings, sometimes second-hand accounts, and the occasional official news release. In such an atmosphere, every pause in communication felt like a lost chance to calm fears or shift the search in a meaningful way. Silence can be an investigative strategy. Police sometimes withhold details deliberately, protecting a developing tactic, safeguarding a witness, or preventing a suspect from knowing what authorities know. Yet prolonged silence can also create problems. When families and community members don't receive regular updates, they begin to suspect the worst. Social media becomes the default outlet for anxious people to ask questions and share theories. That can be useful for crowdsourcing leads, but also dangerous when misinformation spreads. In this case, the lack of steady, transparent information fed a widening gulf between the public's demand for clarity and the investigators' need to control operational detail. The consequences of the RCMP's quiet period weren't only emotional, they were practical. Volunteers and local organizers exhausted themselves searching based on what little guidance they had. Tips trickled in and were sometimes repeated, turning volunteer effort into duplication rather than targeted follow-ups. Families who awaited even a small sign of progress were left to wonder whether the search had stalled. The strain on public confidence was visible in conversations. Neighbors stopped meeting on porches, parents pulled children closer at parks, and the community's civic rhythms adjusted to a new, uneasy normal. In that void, suspicion often becomes louder than patience, and the line between healthy skepticism and corrosive rumor can blur. So when the RCMP finally emerged from their long silence, the statement mattered not only for its content, but for the context of that absence. The first impression people took away was shaped as much by what the Mounties had kept quiet as by what they chose to share. The consequences of that early silence will be debated, whether it was an operational necessity, an avoidable lapse in public information, or a symptom of stretched resources. For now, the fact of the silence remains central because it set the emotional and strategic stage for everything that came after. When the press conference arrived, the message was stark and precise. Time is critical, and the trail has gone cold. Those statements carry heavy implications. In missing child investigations, timing is everything. The early hours and days often offer the best chance of recovering physical evidence, locating witnesses while memories are fresh, and tracking digital or vehicle movements that decay quickly. Saying the trail is cold signals that those initial opportunities have been lost or muddied. It doesn't close the case, but it does shift it from an immediate recovery mission toward a longer, more methodical investigation, one that may rely more on forensics, data analysis, and longer-term canvassing than on quick, visible action like large volunteer grid searches. The time is critical, admonition is not rhetorical. Evidence, biological traces, video captures, and eyewitness recollections degrades quickly. Footprints disappear, surveillance footage may be overwritten within days, and witnesses' memories blur. Even the best police technology can be hamstrung if a lead isn't acted on promptly. So the announcement was both a red flag and a call to action. Red flag for the community because it implied that windows of opportunity had narrowed. Call to action because the RCMP made clear that whatever evidence remained needed immediate public help to be found or corroborated. Yet the word trail has gone cold also raised questions. A trail can go cold in different ways. It can mean investigators chased down every lead near the home and found nothing. It can mean physical evidence vanished or was contaminated. Or it can mean that promising tips were not processed quickly enough to be of use. Whatever the precise mechanics, the result is the same. Investigators and the community face a tougher climb now. The search can continue, and in many cases it must, with renewed intensity. But finding the breakthrough will likely demand new approaches, from deeper data mining to revisiting areas and sources previously ruled low priority. The press conference's bluntness also left curlings of silence where people wanted answers. The RCMP could not confirm whether Lily and Jack were safe. That technical phrasing carries enormous emotional weight. For many listeners, the inability to confirm safety is indistinguishable from confirmation of the worst. That is why careful language matters so much in public briefings. The word's choice both informs and shapes public perception. Saying, "We cannot confirm they are safe," is neutral on its face, but for a grieving neighbor or anxious parent, it signals a terrifying uncertainty. This is the precarious balance investigators must manage. Being truthful without prematurely alarming, and revealing enough to solicit help without compromising the probe. Given these stakes, public reaction was immediate and fierce. Trust eroded as people questioned why critical pieces of evidence, like trail camera footage reportedly captured close to the home, had not been reviewed sooner. Why were certain nearby properties apparently not searched thoroughly? Why had family members not been publicly cleared? When official channels are silent or vague, suspicion tends to focus on gaps, footage that seems late to be checked, doors that seemed unentered, and the names of those last with the children not being definitively ruled in or out. These are not idle curiosities. They reflect real questions about process, resources, and priorities. Even when legal or operational constraints limit what police can say, the appearance of delay or secrecy can damage confidence, hampering cooperation and driving speculation. One of the most practical consequences of the RCMP's announcement was a change in search parameters. That phrase, "search parameters changed," sounds technical in a briefing, but is significant in practice. It signals a reallocation of resources, both geographically and methodologically. Perhaps teams would widen the radius beyond previously covered areas, examine remote corridors, or pivot to different modes of investigation, such as lake searches, landowner canvasses, or specialized forensics. It could also mean narrowing the focus to a smaller, more targeted zone based on new intelligence. Either way, the shift marks a stage change in the investigation, from exhaustive local searches to a more strategic, sometimes slower, process that follows data rather than intuition. Shifts in search strategy reflect both the realities of evidence and the limits of human and material resources. After days of broad sweeps, investigators often need to prioritize where to focus next. That may involve bringing in specialized personnel. 9 teams trained in long-term scent tracking, underwater search units, or analysts who can comb digital metadata for patterns. The RCMP's update suggested such recalibration was underway. Fresh 9 units were arriving, seasoned officers were joining the command post, and new maps were being drawn. This kind of recalibration can improve efficiency and prevent search fatigue among volunteers and staff. But it can also feel like abandonment to those who remember door-to-door searches with flashlights and hope. The inability to confirm the children's safety deepened the psychological toll on the community. When authorities move from immediate response mode to investigative mode, people can feel the shift as emotional retreat. That is why community trust matters so much. Police must balance secrecy for operational reasons with enough transparency to maintain public cooperation and calm. In this case, withheld footage and questions about unsearched nearby homes created a credibility gap. Those gaps, once formed, are hard to fill and can slow information flows. People may stop calling in tips if they believe authorities aren't listening or taking action. One of the most uncomfortable lines of inquiry is about why the two adults last known to be with the children, Daniel Martel and Malaya, or Malia, depending on reports, Brooks Murray, haven't been publicly ruled out. In many investigations, family members are often cleared early if evidence exonerates them, a step that helps narrow focus and calm speculation. The absence of such statements in this case left room for doubt and rumor. There are plausible explanations. Investigators may still be testing alibis, waiting for lab results, or building a timeline that requires careful verification. But the public sees silence differently. It becomes a pause pregnant with questions. Was the testing delayed? Are investigators withholding names for legal reasons? Or is there complexity behind the scenes that has not been shared? Proper investigative practice requires both thoroughness and prudence. Rushing to rule someone out or naming them incorrectly can derail a case and harm innocent people. Yet, transparency about procedural limits, explaining steps being taken without revealing sensitive detail, could reduce mistrust. For local families, the lack of definitive statements about people intimately connected to the children heightens anxiety. It's an understandable, if uncomfortable, result. Despite the bleak language about a cold trail, the RCMP's update also announced renewed operational energy. Fresh K-9 units from neighboring provinces, specialized officers with long-term missing persons experience, and logistical upgrades like newly printed flyers and reorganized volunteer coordination. That matters because such resources can change the calculus of a prolonged search. Sent teams, for example, can sometimes pick up residual tracks even after long intervals. Seasoned commanders can restructure phone banks to better triage tips, and updated leaflets can prompt people in different geographic areas, maybe a motorist who saw something, to come forward. The rebuilding of search capability highlights a crucial point. When official action and community involvement align, impact increases. The RCMP's renewed push was not only about manpower and equipment, it was also about signaling commitment. In high-pressure investigations, visible resolve from authorities can galvanize volunteers and reassure a shaken public. In this case, fresh resources arrived alongside renewed appeals for information, aiming to turn broad community attention into specific, verifiable leads. Following the press conference, public response spiked. Vigils returned, volunteer groups reformed, and online activism surged. The emotional fabric of the community rewoven itself into coordinated action. People who had taken a break from searching because of fatigue or disappointment returned to help. Local organizations, churches, and schools supplied food, warm gear, and organizational support for search teams. Online groups stopped trading only theories and began posting concrete asks. Check your dashcam footage between specific hours, scan old phone videos for glimpses of a pink jacket or a small boot, or re-examine a recorded doorbell timestamp. This shift from speculation to practical requests illustrates how communities can convert anxiety into useful work when they are given clear guidance from authorities. That surge of community energy underscores a central truth. When official updates are discouraging or scarce, community resilience can sustain momentum. Volunteers often fill gaps and keep cases in the public eye, which can increase the odds at a time-sensitive tip surfaces. Yet it's a heavy burden to place on civilians. Their involvement works best when police provide structure, communication, safety guidance, and ways to avoid compromising potential evidence. In the wake of the RCMP's announcement, officials made explicit appeals to the public. Report anything, no matter how small. They asked for old dashcam clips to be checked, for recall of fleeting conversations, and for people to report vehicles seen in the general area during a tight time window. This kind of canvas is vital. Often, missing persons breakthroughs come from tiny, previously dismissed observations. a license plate fragment, a particular hat, or a passing person's recollection of a child near a certain roadway. When those details are collected, cross-referenced, and time-aligned, patterns emerge. But timing is crucial. Digital files can be overwritten, memories fade, and seasonal changes can mask physical traces. That's why the RCMP's renewed request for immediate tips, despite the earlier cold trail warning, was still hopeful. It recognized that even late tips can be valuable if they point investigators to places or people not yet considered. From this unfolding story emerged several hard lessons. First, prolonged silence from authorities can erode public trust. Even when silence is tactically justified, lack of regular, transparent communication creates a vacuum that can be filled by suspicion. Second, small, overlooked details can be crucial in reopening a cold trail. Evidence seemingly insignificant at first, an old camera clip, a neighbor's memory, can create a pivot for investigators. Third, shifts in search strategy often reflect major changes in evidence or leads. They're not failures per se, but recalibrations that may offer better long-term results. Fourth, community resilience is critical. When official updates are gloomy, volunteer energy and coordinated activism keep the case alive and increase the chance of new information surfacing. Finally, transparency in early stages matters. Even limited, careful public briefings can prevent rumor from undermining investigations and reassure citizens that work is ongoing. This case remains unresolved, but it is far from forgotten. The RCMP's blunt update was a bitter but necessary moment. It clarified the gravity of the situation while also re-energizing search efforts and public engagement. The truth, when it comes, will depend as much on careful investigative work as on an informed, compassionate partnership between police and community. If you have any information, please contact the official tip lines immediately. Every detail counts. Every witness matters. The trail may be cold, but with coordinated effort and urgent action, even a faint lead can warm it again. In closing, remember these key takeaways. Silence can hurt trust. Tiny details can change outcomes. Strategic shifts reflect evolving evidence. Communities can carry a case forward when institutions falter. And clear, honest communication from authorities helps stop rumor and fuel effective search work. Keep watching, keep sharing verified information, and if you're able, volunteer or support credible search organizations. The path to answers is rarely straightforward, but persistence, coordination, and compassion give us the best chance to bring Lily and Jack home.